Proportional Response, Book 1, Chapter 15, Part 10, A Herd Mentality. Enibal sat perfectly still, ruthlessly keeping his face completely neutral as Jalat gestured wildly and spoke with a passion he had rarely seen from a Zoltan.
No, I say. No, we cannot allow the humans to flout the proper order of things. We must bring these humans to heel. We must send a message to them in no uncertain terms that they can't just expand inexorability, like the microbial infections of their own death world, into our sovereign territories. We must make it clear to them that there are rules and procedures, that there are right ways to do things, and that if they wish to progress, that they are expected to bring all of us along with them.
Enibal's eyes widened, and only an iron-willed exertion of self-control kept him from rocking back in his seat as Jalat waved her hand through a control, and Henry's platform began to float back down to its place. She is not only talking out both sides of her mouth, but now she does this. Even the actual Prime Minister is not supposed to have the ability to forcibly control a platform. Prevent it from being detached, under certain conditions maybe, but not force control. He turned to look at Kasla, who returned his look with a grim countenance. They both wanted to discuss the matter, but couldn't. Not here, where Jalat, no doubt, had every illegal recording device ever installed, turned on. Anger and incredulity bubbled up as Enibal turned his eyes back to Jalat and the receding Henry. She's talking like Kilintar used to, back when he had total control of this council and could just kill out of hand any ambassador who dared call him on it. This is more than a move against humanity. This is her stepping up and announcing that the Altons expect everyone to fall in line, immediately, with the way things used to be, or else. She just doesn't get it, though, that there is no or else which the majority of this council doesn't believe humanity will counter. Jalat pointedly turned her attention away from Henry as soon as his platform started to move. She let it lower a little before speaking again.
Of course, that human who is jumping up and down like his hairy little ancestors because he wants to interrupt me doubtlessly wants to stand here and try to browbeat the council. Again, with threats of violence or to withhold your precious chocolate.
Jalat waved a dismissive hand at the ambassadors assembled and glared at Henry as if the fact that he had not moved a single muscle since she cut his mic and sent him back downwards, much less jumped around like a monkey, was some sort of personal insult. Enibal found himself marveling at the Alton once again. Henry is holding quite still, you stupid lizard, and you still haven't realized that this council can no longer be browbeaten. The Duke snorted slightly and shook his head. Yes, my Duke, their arrogance knows no bounds at all. You see what I've had to deal with? Jalat continued.
Since the humans have proven that they are quite willing to actually commit the violence that they threaten, I will put forth to this esteemed council that it will hardly worth it to try to dislodge them from the worlds they have usurped from under council authority. At the same time, their actions are a slap in the face to the authority, not to mention the security, of this council, and to every one of your nations. Something must be done. So, I put forth that the humans should in due course be expected to pay the registration fees for the worlds that they have so boldly, quietly, and underhandedly claimed. This must be done to maintain the peace of the League and to preserve our council's dignity and strength. I further move that, as the Zoltans were willing to sacrifice, and have sacrificed for generations, that the monies which will be collected from the humans for the worlds that they have usurped will be paid to the League military, as the Zoltan money would have been if we had been able to claim these worlds. The Exultant Republic also submits, as part of our proposal, that the 100 years annual payment for these worlds be set to the maximum punitive amount allowed by law.
A collective intake of breath swept through the chamber, but Jalat plowed ahead.
Something must be done to curb human adventurism, my fellow ambassadors, and we all know that the humans are throwing inordinate quantities of money towards their militaries. How long do you think, really, before each and every one of you have a human knife at your throat? I further propose that we do not let the human hear.
She gave a contemptuous sneer and waved dismissively at Henry.
Speak in these proceedings. We have all heard the lies and the threats of the humans often enough. Do we really need to hear him mule such noises at us again? Of course, such a course of action as this is extreme. I see some of you looking at me as if I am trying to run roughshod over the laws of our league, but I assure you, I am not."
She waved her hands at her display, and Annabel's scream chimed. Several sections of league law, with highlights and annotations, appeared on his screen. He glanced at them, then looked again. Then he focused, and found himself having to read. He looked over at Kalzor, and both of them glanced back at Yoro. She didn't bother to look up, but her lips had pressed into a thin line as she read. Judging by the speed that the text reflecting in her glasses is flashing by, I am guessing she has already read the relevant passages and is looking for counter-arguments. Jalat may have something of a point, maybe, but even if Yoro doesn't find anything, what she is citing is more a pretext for doing what she wants than something to give her a firm standing in law. He turned back to his screen and found that a message had popped up from Henry. It cited a few passages that could be construed to counter what Jalat tried to do. Not enough to completely shoot her down, but enough to further muddy the waters. He looked around and took stock of other ambassadors' body language and realized that Henry had to have gotten the message out to everyone else. Jalat stood, the epitome of patient reasonableness, waiting for them to read what she provided. After most of the ambassadors appeared to have finished the reading and started trying to check information for themselves, she spoke again.
"Several of you have messaged me, as we all took time to review the law, that we should recess this session and give time to consider this plan. I will agree that this is not a matter we should enter into hastily, but I also will ask you to remember that our esteemed Prime Minister has already set aside the next several days for us to debate this topic. I believe, however, we should allow preliminary arguments to be heard before we recess."
She turned to the Kilintar, who simply nodded and waved.
"Thank you, Prime Minister, for seeing the wisdom of continued open debate. In the spirit of that open debate, I will now turn the floor over to the Kothro ambassador to speak of the humans and this proposal."
The Koto ambassador's oversized, to Annabel's thinking anyway, bulk stood. Runda wore the traditional attire for his homeworld's ambassadors over his brown fur. The man's ponderous bulk moved slowly, and his voice came out in a low rumble. Annabel knew of few races as large as the Kothro, and sometimes wondered how they managed to move their large bodies around so well. I suppose, with the fact that their world is a bit lower gravity than ours, it would be easier for them to grow to such girth. But, according to the briefing, I'd be wrong. He watched the man stand up, and could see muscles ripple. They wear so little clothing, much less than what you would expect from an 8.6 index world. I wish I could remember why their world had such a high index. It obviously isn't from the climate. I think it was something about some sort of predators. They barely wear clothes at all, and seem to find the idea of the robes most of us agree on as insulting. Or was it dangerous? Still, all that muscle serves them well here. I have never known one to wear a grav assist device. The Kothro interrupted his wool-gathering by, finally, speaking.
"Esteemed ambassadors, I come before you in supplication and with grave concern. We Kothro are a cautious people, as you all well know. We also have more than our share of experience with dangerous predators, and so have always been wary of the humans. Still, we try to be a fair-minded people, and not to let our fears cause us to treat those of other herds poorly. It was with such high-minded principles, the very principles espoused by this league, that we entered into business with the humans. I do not think I need to remind you how poorly that turned out. Some of our citizens are still trying to recover from the emotional wounds of the humans' unprovoked, violent action on hard-working civilians."
Mutters spread through the chambers. Annabel had to fight to keep his eyes from rolling so he could take the measure of the crowd. He did see several eyes roll, but he also saw more than a few angry glances at Henry. The Kothro raised a three-fingered hand in what seemed to be a placating gesture before he continued.
"Some of you appeared dubious about my claim of intensive therapy for my fellows, doubtlessly thinking about the reputation our military has. I tell you true, however, that few of my people go into that military, and that those who sacrifice for the herd to be trained at war go through years of mental preparation to be able to handle violence. It has always been the way of my kind. The few who fight choose that path young and must dedicate their minds to the task."
He waved a hand dismissively in the air.
"Still, I did not come before you to give a lesson about my people, but to beseech you to set the humans back from their violent ways. I have reviewed the worlds that the esteemed and gracious Jalat has pointed out to us, and 2 of them are uncomfortably close to the Gaussian congregation. 1 of them is only a few days' travel from Iktar itself. Please, these humans have shown that they can't be trusted, and allowing them to flourish unhindered on worlds so close to so many of us is to lie down for the Gibsnug and ask to be fodder. How long, if they are left unchecked, will it be before they boil forth from these usurped worlds and try to take ours? How long before their violence and drive to dominate sets them on us? We Kothro have a saying: do not feed the baby Gibsnush, do not take it into your herd, for if it survives it will one day eat you. The humans have proven themselves remorseless and violent, and something must be done.
Hannibal sat with his eyebrows furrowed and considered what he just heard. Something bothered him about it. I can't say I'm really surprised. The Kothro herd mentality gives them a tendency toward near-slavish dedication to whomever they consider to be rightfully in charge. But Runda's speech just didn't. "Oh, that bloody-minded bitch!" Herd. Runda used herd at least twice. Those bovine blowhards consider that word to be a grave insult. There is no way he wrote that speech himself. The only real question is whether the Alton who wrote it for him knows about the insult and enjoyed putting it there, or doesn't know, and couldn't be bothered to look it up.